Hi, this is Brian Hegney, instructor of Game and Interactive Media Design. In this next video, we are going to make the low poly model of this barrel. I believe this is the 13th video or something like that, so it took us a long time to explain making this barrel out of multiple components. Mostly the box, actually all of it, the box. We used the cone along the way, but now we're going to make the low poly version. Let's go ahead and set ourselves up though. Number one, I am going to freeze this barrel because I don't want to accidentally screw it up. Okay, so I'm going to left click it, and if I don't do anything to it and just right click and say freeze selection, it's going to turn it gray, and actually I like that, so that's fine the way it is. So I'm going to keep it that way. If you don't want it to turn gray, just to point out, I'm going to right click and say unfreeze all. If you click on an object and go to display mode, which is the display tab in the command panel, it's a little computer screen, it's possible we could say uncheck show frozen in gray. That's just for this object itself. And I can right click, or I could choose the freeze mode here under freeze, and I could say freeze selected, and it's now not gray. Here's the problem, I actually want it gray, so I'm going to right click, say unfreeze all, go to this object, say show frozen in gray, and gonna just freeze selected, and there it's gray. You'll see why in a second. I just don't want to get too confused. The next thing I'm going to do is we're going to go ahead and make a low poly barrel out of a cylinder. So I'm going to click cylinder, and I'm just going to draw one. Boom, boom, there it is. There's a cylinder. And what I want to do is go into my front mode. And you know, we have the height of the cylinder should be about 150 centimeters. I guess it's going to be slightly smaller than that because of the way our barrel is set up. We also want to tap W and just set this into the center, and we are going to want to change the radius. Now, the other thing, we could, it doesn't matter if it aligns with the radius at the top or the radius in the middle. I'm going to align mine to the top, and I'm going to choose 1, 2, how many edge? I'm going to go with height segments. I think I want 5 height segments. You'll see why in a second. Okay? Set yourself up for 5 height segments. In terms of the number of sides, I think I actually want 20 sides. Now, in the olden days, what you'd have to do is actually check this out with your technical, what are your technical specs of this barrel. If we wanted to have very few polygons because it's going to be repeated hundreds of times, like we might want to set ourselves up for 10 segments. You know what, let me just set this up for 10, but I do want to set this up so that the number of sides actually correlates, of this low poly correlates with, the number of slats that we have, right? Because if I set this for 20 sides, notice how well that would align with our high poly model. That's just going to set ourselves up for good stuff. So you know what, let's just go ahead and do this 20 sides. That's not that big of a deal. I'm going to go into front mode. You know, I'm second guessing. You know what, because this is low poly, I want this to be fairly low poly, let's set ourselves up for 10. That's okay, much better than 8. And also we don't want these corners to get like off of ourselves, so let's set this up for 10. So each side of our low poly will have 2 slats. That should make sense. Go into front mode. Let's go now and set up our, go add an edit poly. What I'm going to do in this edit poly is go into edge mode, and I actually want to select the top and control select the bottom, and I'm going to go into my orbiting mode. Actually, you know what, I'm going to go into front mode here, And I want to set myself to view this object in my front, top. I'm going to set this up for front, this up for left, and this up for perspective. And I'm going to click on the button down here, say zoom extents all selected, and kind of zoom out a little bit. Okay. Now with these, I still have the edge loop selected, and if I right click and say isolate selection, you'll see just the low poly barrel, and you'll see I have these two edge loops, the top and the bottom one selected. Okay, let me end isolate because I actually need to see the high poly barrel. And in my perspective view, I'm going to tap R, and I'm not going to do the squash. Remember, so if you tap R a couple times, it's going to rotate and cycle through different types of scaling. The one you don't want is the squash, select and squash. Watch what happens. I don't know if you can tell what's going on here. Oh, that's actually working. Not sure why that's working well. It wasn't supposed to. Oh, you know what? Because you can't really see what's going on. Let me isolate selection, turn this to that mode. So if you have squash, oh, it's actually working well. I don't know why, you son of a gun. If you pull it in this direction, what you'll notice is that when it stretches, it squeezes in the other direction. Okay, so that's what squashing is. And that can really screw with your object, so you know what? Just, I guess, but if you work in perspective, I guess I forgot that it doesn't squash it. Okay, in any case, I don't care. I want to be in this mode, uniform scale, or the second one. I guess when we're doing legs and bodies, it actually makes more of a difference. Okay, whatever. I am going to isolate selection by, or end isolate by going there. I'm going to set my viewport up to see wireframe. And in my perspective, I'm going to scale these out until it hits like that. Just going to zoom in a little bit like that. And I want it to be about there. Okay. The next thing I'm going to do is select all of the middle edge loops. And then the same thing, in perspective mode, I'm going to drag it out like that. That, and the next thing I'm going to go into face selection mode. I'm going to select the top face and scale it out a little more. Hold down Alt to scale it like that. Oh, you know, I should have selected both top and bottom. Zoom in here, right click into perspective. There. Okay. Alright, so there's the first thing I did, the first edit poly. So if I toggle that on and off, you can see what that does to the low poly model. I'm going to add another edit polygon. Oops, not patch. Edit poly. And I'm going to select face polygon select. I'm just going to, if you don't have anything selected, I'm going to sit Q, select the top and control click the bottom. We're going to do both of these at the same time. And I'm going to use a tool called Inset. Inset allows me to make a little shape inset, and what that's going to simulate is the rim of the barrel. Let's keep doing it probably about that much. And I'm going to click the check to say OK. And the next thing I'm going to do is something called bevel, bevel. And bevel includes extrude. I know a lot of people want to get to extrude. Bevel includes extrude. I'm going to click the little box to the right of bevel, and so I can actually see what's going on here. I'm going to bevel it inward, so I need to move my place a little bit. And I'm going to do it till it just hits above the thing there. And the second thing below it is the, well, that's actually the beveling. The first one was extruding. I'm going to just set it like that. I could have brought this, you know, in by going negative and then towards the, to kind of, to mimic that, the slant of the barrel tops, right? If I set this to 0, it's just going straight down. I don't know if I want that, because it really would, should be slightly negative to mimic that angle. There we go. All right. And now I'm going to stop there, and I'm going to isolate my selection so we can see this beautiful barrel we just made. All right, so there's our barrel. Now this is pretty low poly, and you know what? I'm actually not liking that. So I'm probably going to go back and redo it and give myself 20 instead of 10. And again, I can't just go down and give myself 20 sides, because it's going to totally screw up all of this stuff up here. So I'm going to just pause this for a second while I create a whole new one. Alright, and so now I went back and I said, okay, I gave myself 20 sides, and it's pretty good. And if you want to take a look at how many polygons you have, tap the number 7. And now I have how many are in my cylinder, how many polys are in my cylinder, and how many are in my scene. Now yours won't necessarily be set up like that. Let's just take a look at how we do that. Click the plus button in any viewport and configure your viewports. Go to statistics, and I always choose, or I like to choose, total plus selection. Polygon count is really important, and just say apply or okay. And so if I isolate, you can see that I can select, oh, and I'm going to unfreeze as well. Well, you know what? Let me select my high poly barrel. You can see I've got almost 60,000 polygons for my high poly barrel, but only about 182 polygons for my low poly. So there's a big drastic difference, but really the overall shape isn't that different. Okay. In the next section, we are going to deal with the top here, because as you'll note, this top is not a quad. It is an n-gon of about 20 sides, and we need to fix that. All right, you'll learn about cutting in the next video. Bye!